First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. Greg Nibbler here with Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us today. You know, there's probably no other term in technology that's been discussed more in the last couple of years than artificial intelligence, AI. It pretty much is involved in almost everything we do right now. There's great use cases for it when you think about Google Maps, or any kind of maps program or recommendations that you can get. Those are improvements that can come from AI. And even ChatGPT can be good. But there's also the fear of AI. If it's used for nefarious purposes, is it going too far? Are there any kind of regulations on it, or is it going to take your job? That's something I'll admit. I've seen some of the AI broadcasters out there, and worries me a little bit. But there's a lot to talk about with that. And what happened is DHM Research went out and actually asked people in the state of Washington what they thought about it, and that's what we're going to discuss, are the actual feelings and thoughts that those people that were polled have. I want to say we're broadcasting live on Facebook as well, so if you do have any thoughts on AI as we go through, feel free to drop those into the comments. But we have our expert from DHM joining us right now, Mr. John Horvick. John, it is always so good to have you here on the show. I love discussing the data that you go out and find, because it's really, it's meticulous. You go through all the efforts to find out exactly what people are thinking across all kinds of different demographics, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at data. We're talking about AI and data, so it really goes hand in hand, I feel like.
Yeah, it's great to be able to talk to people too about new and emerging issues, because it'll be important to monitor how things change. People are just kind of forming their opinions now. And as people learn more information, as events unfold, we'll be able to see how people how those things shape people's opinions.
Yeah, and AI is one of those things that just changes so quickly. Just the advancements happen. There's just so much that changes rapidly. So forming opinions is really interesting to see what people think about it. So I guess to start off, tell everybody about this particular survey.
Sure. Well, DHM Research, we regularly do our own surveys, both in Oregon and Washington State. This is a survey we did up in Washington State. And we conducted this in April, so a few months ago. And I say that because this is a really dynamic issue, and heck, it's possible that opinions have changed even since April. But a statewide survey, 500 Washingtonians, meant to be representative of the adult population there. So by geography, by age, by political persuasion, income, all that stuff. Just a snapshot in time. And I'd say the other thing about the survey is AI is a huge issue. Right? There are lots and lots of things you could ask about, and there's lots of different ways you could frame the questions. And so we just dipped our toes in the water on this issue, and this is by no means definitive, but I think it gives us a little sort of look into Washingtonians' first reactions to some of these issues, and some differences across demographics that are interesting. And it inspires us to ask more questions. So we'll continue to be asking these questions in the years to come.
And that's, again, just talking about DHM Research and just some of the different things that you have up there as far as these polls and the different ways that you collect this data. It really is across the board. These are opinions that people have. This is data, the results of that. So I want to emphasize, too, for anybody watching, we're not leaning you one way or another. This is what people think. This is what the results said. And so that's why I always like to see that. I just saw a comment, if our government is creating AI, God help us all. So, people have all their opinions as they come through here. So feel free to drop those on there if you're watching live. But let's get into the data. Let's talk about what some of these results were.
Well, sure. Just like the big question, at least kind of the framing question that we asked. Again, you could ask these things all sorts of different ways, but we thought it'd be fun to ask if people are optimists or pessimists. We gave them a third category, which is complicated, but sort of on that metric. Are people more looking forward to what's coming, feeling good about it, more anxious about it, or kind of a mix of the two? 33% said they were optimists. They think that this is a positive development. 23% said that they were pessimists, and then the rest said, hey, man, it's complicated. It could be a mix of the two. So on balance, a little bit more positive than worried, but not overwhelmed, and I suppose people are keeping their minds open. What is interesting, you got it up there now, is that there are some demographic differences. I think notably is that younger people, not overwhelmingly optimistic, but are quite a bit more optimistic than those who are 65. So nearly twice as optimistic as those who are older. Also by income, there's where a real big difference is. Our highest income Washingtonians are much more optimistic than those who are lower income. And then, there's a combination, a correlation between income and area. But, King County is more optimistic than other parts of the state. And King County is also a place where a lot of tech companies are located. And so there could be, a relatively higher share of the public who isn't just a user of these, but a creator,
Right.
or companies who are creating these sorts of tools. And so that's interesting too, particularly in Washington State.
Yeah, I mean, I see that the King County, 41%, but then Puget Sound as a whole, one of the lowest, as far as optimism.
That's right. So you really could have those Seattle, your Microsoft, your Google, your Amazon sorts of employees, and sort of fanning out from that. Now, they don't represent the majority of King County voters, but sort of that sentiment, maybe it appears to be more predominant specifically in King County than other parts of the state.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of your thoughts on any of those companies, if you're in that area in King County, I mean, certainly they influence a lot of things, even if you don't work for them. So that's really, really kind of fascinating to see that difference in there. And also, I just want to go back to this again really quick and just take a look at one of the other things. So you mentioned the income differences. That is interesting. So lower the income, the more or the less excited you are about that. But also, there's that one spike there between the 30 and 44. They're they're at 41% versus on either side of that demographic.
So the way I would interpret that, I mean, it's true, 30 to 44-year-olds were the most optimistic, and that is what we measured. I'd say just if we want to think more generally, younger people are more optimistic than those who are older. And so we see this little bit of jump up from that middle-age category, but I'd probably put my eyes on that 65-plus category, which is those who are, the oldest Washingtonians are the least so optimistic about the future. Now, I don't know why. I could speculate that various reasons why. It could be, interactions with technology. It could be, just their sort of views of the future generally, and they have, only tangentially related to AI specifically. But we do see these generational differences, and it is going to be, younger people who are creating these tools and have them present in their lives for a longer time.
Right, that they're going to be around them more and probably a little bit more used to it, especially even with general, activity with your phone, with apps. They're used to. I mean, TikTok, AI is kind of one of the main driving forces there.
Exactly.
So so a little bit more comfortable with the idea of it, even if the execution could be some questions sometimes.
It's not it's not in the slide, but something else is in the data is that those who are more optimistic about AI, we kind of see them more optimistic about other things too, right? So they felt better about the economy, for example. They felt better about their personal finances. And so some of this could just be dispositional, right? People who are optimistic in general are seeing a new technology and think that it could be, positive in their lives and in society, and some people just aren't that and are going to look at any new technology more negatively. So there could be overlapping issues here too, just not just demographic, but some just personality traits that people have.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect of it as well. So, what were some other findings from this?
Well, some of the things that sort of stuck out to me, you had the slide up there, I think, ago about regulation. Should things be regulated by the government? So this is a case where would in the future we'll want to ask a lot more questions, because we didn't ask what sorts of AI ought to be regulated. We didn't ask about what sort of level of government ought to do the regulations or what the regulations should be. I mean, you could think of all sorts of different ones. But we did not see a knee-jerk reaction against regulations. In fact, we see sort of the majority of Washington folks saying, "Gosh, yeah, we're probably going to need some government regulation." One thing that stood out to me is when you look at the party breakdown, that a majority of Republicans, that was a pretty slim majority, I think it was 53%, but a majority of Republicans in Washington said, "Yeah, we're going to need government regulation," and that's just not always. Very frequently, in fact, not what we tend to see, right? We tend to see Democrats, seeing some, technology or large business sort of activity and be more, and they are here too. They're more favorable towards government regulation, but Republicans could sort of be on the whole of their side of that question. But that's not the case here. We do see more Republicans, and in fact, a majority of Republicans saying that government regulation might be necessary for this. So that's one thing that stood out to me. And I call that out because so much about society, about our culture, about our economy is divided by Democrats and Republicans, the left versus right. And AI, at least today, doesn't really have that valiance, that there's not an obvious sort of Democratic take on it or Republican take on it. And that's one of the things I'm going to be curious to be watching as we go forward. Does this become a partisan issue, or is it beyond partisanship? And right now, you see some differences by party, but they're pretty small compared to other things that we often measure. So that to me really stood out, that this is not a left-right issue, at least now. We'll see where we head in the future.
Yeah, I mean, because so many things do kind of end up that way, split along, like you mentioned, those party lines. And AI, I wonder if it's maybe, this is speculation just on my part, but because it's so much in the beginning stages, because there's a lot of scary things out there, or at least things being said, it's moving so fast, we're going to end up like Terminator 2, there's all that kind of aspect of it. And I wonder if that's kind of fuels a little bit of that wanting the government to step in and regulate AI. Yeah, really, really interesting, and it'll be fascinating, to see how that changes over time.
Yeah, it will. We'll be watching it. One other thing to mention is we did some focus groups recently. Now, not about AI, but they're about the economy, and of course, because people are thinking about this issue when they think about the economy, and it became clear to me that people were across the groups and across the individuals. People were using the term AI very differently to one another. It was, they would mention things like Chat GPT specifically, and some had really grandiose ideas about, AI kind of being able to generate its own ideas and new thinking and put together things in ways that had never been conceived before. And other people were just thinking, like, it is a tool to process routine things, and kind of that's it. And I will say, I don't have a great definition for what AI is. When people respond to survey questions about AI, we should also just keep in mind, people have different notions of what this means. And as we continue to ask people about these issues, we need to continue to press and be specific and try to learn more. Are we all having the same conversation, or are we having a different conversation? Because that's a challenge with an emerging technology to ask people about.
Right, and something as broad as artificial intelligence. I mean, it's machine learning, but being applied in so many different ways. You wonder are we going to end up with different terms for different types of use cases to distinguish between all of those. That is a very good point of, just where, and it's hard to even ask that. I wouldn't even know what question to ask somebody, to really fully grasp what their viewpoint is of AI, but that's what DHM Research does. So
that's what we'll continue to work on.
Yeah. Any other things that stood out to you?
No, those are really the big ones. Yeah, the lack of partisan differences are interesting. The role for government. Yeah. And sort of just notionally, are people optimistic or pessimistic? And people, more hopeful than not, but a lot of people are keeping an open mind.
Right. Yeah, and it's complicated. That's probably, that makes sense that that's the majority, because who knows? Well, John, as always, I really appreciate you joining us here for these conversations, because in analyzing this data, and, you do so many different surveys across a lot of different, categories and different topics. For everybody out there to follow along with this data, where would you recommend that they go?
Sure. They can go to our website, dhmresearch.com, and you can go to the page that says Insights. That's where we post a lot of our survey research. You can find these findings and others. You can also follow us on the Twitter, or X, whatever we're calling it nowadays, at dhmresearch.com. And I'm at Horvick. I post a lot of our materials on there too.
Nice. John, always great to see you.
You bet.
And for everybody watching too, if you want to see some of our other interviews with John, those are all on our YouTube channel, Fox 12 Organs. You go there and take a look at those and any of the other segments that we've done here. I know there's a a lot of issues that we have covered where we have some of that data and people's thoughts on things. So you can go and definitely check out all of those. All right, this is Fox 12 Now. It's your first time watching. Thanks for being here. We're live every weekday at 1 p.m. Pacific, so you can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, our apps. That's a great way to watch, and also on our website. I am going to take a quick break, but I'll be right back at 1:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to be joined by Zachary from the Oregon Black Pioneers Organization. They're celebrating their 30th anniversary of preserving African American history in Oregon. Really great event coming up. We're going to talk all about their organization and everything that they do and all the different things that they're a part of. And that's coming up, like I said, at 1:30 p.m. Pacific. So join right back, whatever platform you're on, just join right back then. I'll talk to you then. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.